He goes, it's Ed Van Halen. I'm like, oh. As soon as he said Ed Van Halen, I said to him, I said, the 256 Chevys? He goes, how'd you know that? I said, well, this is now 2008, by the way. Because 10 years ago, Super Chevy Magazine did an article on his 256 Chevys and his 55. And I knew the cars. I remember I said, I have the magazine. And he's like, yeah. He goes, those are the cars that Eddie wants to sell. I was like, well, I said, I get it. I said, Eddie just can't put an ad on Auto Trader and take phone calls out. People come to his house and show him a car. He goes, exactly. He goes, I'll put you in touch with his assistant. We'll get this thing all set up. A couple days go by. I get a call from a gentleman named Matt. Nice guy. Eddie's right-hand guy. Does everything for Eddie. Super nice guy. Calls me up. I'm in California. And he goes, Joe, my name's Matt. I'm Ed's assistant. So I never thought I was going to ever meet Ed. I figured I'm just going to deal with the assistant, go in, figure out a deal on the cars. We make an appointment to go up to LA. I get up there, I meet Matt, and I thought I was going to an office. I'm going to Eddie's house. I'm like, wow, all right, cool, man. This is Eddie Van Halen's house. I go up, big giant gates. I pull up, I hit the button. Hi, how you doing? Gates open up, I drive in. And the row of garages are open up, the doors are open, and I see a 56 Chevy sitting in there. And I knew the car, burgundy, Pro Street car, 454, automatic, tubbed, slammed on the ground. Car was built in the early 90s, killer car. I was like, wow, there it is. That's the car, right? And now I'm starting to take this all in. I'm like, man, I'm at Eddie Van Halen's house. This is pretty good. I mean, I saw Eddie Van Halen in concert when I was 14. I was like, this is awesome. So this guy, Matt, comes out, and he goes, yeah, here's a car. I'm looking at it. I said, okay. I said, where's the Nomad? And it was a 56 Nomad. Turquoise interior, older restoration, but very nice car. Factory air car, first year Chevrolet factory air, which is pretty rare. And he goes, we got to go up the hill. So we go up this hill and you make a turn and there's this big building. I'm going, that's a pretty obscure building. And I see 5150 painted on the side of the building. I'm like, oh, that's the studio. The 5150 Studios, Ed Studios on his property. I said, that's a studio? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'll give you a tour of that later. I said, awesome. Out of the corner of my eye, I see somebody walk out of the building, but I'm not paying attention to anybody. And I'm looking at the car, I'm in it, I'm under the hood, I'm climbing underneath the car. I'm like, yeah, man, it's a nice car, we'll figure out something. And I see this guy standing kind of over here out of just on my peripheral. And I thought he was a handyman or some housekeeper guy, the guy's got a strap-on light on his head with LEDs. He's wearing a pair of magnifying reader glasses, and he's just standing there. And I got my head under the hood. And Matt says, oh, Joe, he goes, I want you to introduce you to Ed. And I'm like, Eddie Van Halen, I get to meet my rock star hero. And I turn, and it's this guy with short hair, a light on his head, and magnifying glasses. And he goes, hey, how you doing, Ed Van Halen? I'm like, oh, Ed, how you doing? He goes, oh, yeah. He goes, I'm working on a guitar. He goes, my eyesight's not what it used to be. He takes the things off, takes the readers off. I know, Eddie, when you picture Eddie Van Halen, what do you think of? You think Eddie Van Halen, 80s, ripped jeans, sleeveless T-shirt, long hair, ripping a guitar, right? Well, this is 2010 Eddie Van Halen, 2009 Eddie Van Halen. The short hair, subdued. And I was like, wow, Ed, how you doing? And he was the nicest guy in the world. So we're looking at the Nomad. He's telling me about the car, and I see the license plate. License plate on the Nomad says She Mad. I'm like, so what's with the plate? What's with the play on names? Ed goes, it's a good story. He goes, let me tell you. He goes, I bought this car for my first wife, for Valerie. It was Valerie Bertinelli's car. We had plans on a Saturday night to go to dinner with some friends. He goes, I find this car in the Auto Trader for sale at like 4 in the afternoon in LA. I jump my motorcycle and I run down to go look at it. He goes, meanwhile, Valerie's blowing up my phone because we have to go to dinner with some friends. Long story short, I buy the car, have it flatbed at home, 8 o'clock at night. We didn't go to dinner. She is pissed off at me. The car got named She Mad. And it stuck with the car, and that was her car, for years. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So that was a good story when we went to sell the car. So he's like, well, what are we going to do? I was like, let me get them back to my shop. I'll get them detailed. I can tell they've been sitting around for a while. I said, we got a long lead to Scottsdale. We're going to take these things to Barrett-Jackson, do a good hype on them. We'll get them done. So I get back down to my showroom. I call Ed's assistant, thank him for meeting Ed. And I said, I got an idea. And he says, what's that? And I give him the idea. I said, any way we can get 2 guitars to match each car that Ed could sign and they can go with the car. And he goes, Joe, that's a great idea. He goes, hang on a second. Ed's right here. I can hear him talking to Ed. Ed grabs the phone and he goes, that's an awesome idea. He goes, yeah. He goes, okay. He goes, hit. And all of a sudden, Ed goes into rock star mode. He goes, I'm going to call my guitar designer, the custom shop. They'll build these 2 guitars. He goes, we'll paint them to match the cars, blah, 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 blah. The whole thing just started to come together and gel in about 5 minutes on the phone. I go back up to Ed's house a week later with my truck and trailer to pick up the 2 cars to bring them down. I'm at Ed's and I got a consignment contract. We're sitting in his living room. Eddie comes over and he's got a soda in his hand and he's got this plastic Ziploc bag. I'm not paying attention to it. So he walks up, he goes, oh, hey, he goes, I want to show you something. And he tosses me this bag. And it's a Ziploc bag and it's a frozen bone. I'm saying to myself, what's this, like a soup bone or something, like a dog bone? I said, what's this? He goes, oh, that's my hip. He had a prosthetic hip put in back, I think, in the early 2000s. And I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, yeah, that ball socket, yeah, that is a hip. He goes, yeah, I kept it, right? We get back to my showroom and Ed wants to see our place. I got a 47 Dodge cab over truck, all in the back, custom. Ed's drawn to this thing like a fly to a light bulb. And he's all over this thing. He goes, oh, this thing is awesome. He goes, how much is it? And I think it was like 48 grand. And he goes, I want to buy it. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it. I want it. And he's like, oh yeah. He goes, I can go to Home Depot in this thing. He goes, look at all the stuff I can put in the back of it. He was just, wouldn't leave, right? His agent's there. His manager's there. His assistant's there. He's got to get back to LA for something. He doesn't want to leave. So I look at his assistant, Matt, and I go, we got another SheMad problem here, don't we? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, he gets in tune on something. He doesn't want to leave. We cut the deal. He goes back to LA. We take the cars to Scottsdale. The auction is a huge success. Now, Ed's supposed to show up at the auction. We get the cars up on block. The 56 Chevy comes up first. I'm up on the big podium. I'm looking down at the sea of people, and I'm talking about the cars, and I apologize because everybody was expecting Eddie to show up, and I apologize that he couldn't show up. I said, but he had a huge success with his guitar release. I said he was at the NAMM show. He just couldn't leave. He had to go to Europe today. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but I'm the substitution. I know it's not much to look at and ask for, but that's all I can offer you. And everybody laughed. It was actually pretty good. First car sells after everything. The 56 Chevy does 103 grand. The Nomad comes up. It sells after fees and everything. It does 94 grand, which was huge money for a Nomad in 2009 and huge money for a 56 Chevy for a 10 or 15, almost 20-year-old, probably a 15-year-old, Pro Street car. And my buddy from Fender calls me. He goes, Joe, man, he goes, everything looked great. He goes, I'm glad everything happened, the way it did. It all came together. I said, that was such a good idea doing the guitar thing. I said, it just tied everything together. I was like, yeah. I said, it really worked out. I said, I'm happy the way it worked out. What happened with this truck Eddie bought? I heard he bought a truck from you. I said, yeah, I got to deliver it. I said, now that I'm back from Scottsdale, I got to deliver it next week. He goes, great. I'm glad things worked out. He goes, we're friends and we've been friends for a long time. He goes, but you always got to throw a bone to your friend. And I said, buddy, you have no idea how real that is.